Hi everybody, it's Trinity. I am here to talk to you about books, and if you found me, you're obviously here to talk about books as well. For this video, what I'm going to do is my September wrap-up. I know it's late. I'm sorry. Doing videos is new to me, so getting in the process of finding a schedule and all of that stuff has been kind of a hit and miss opportunity. So what I'm going to do is first give you the stats for September, and then we will go into the books that I read. Now, one thing I want to mention is that I have mild dyslexia and ADHD, so sometimes it's really hard for me to read physical books, but I can listen to audiobooks and I get the same immersive experience. And I don't have to fight myself to actually sit down and read the physical book. Or, there are certain books that I really can't sit down and read because of my problems that I have while reading. But let's go ahead and kick this off. I read 17 books in September. The breakdown of that will be 2 I DNF'd. 1 is a temporary DNF, and I will talk about that when I get there. I had 1 2-star book, 4 3-star books, 8 4-star books, and 2 5-star books. 3 of them were historical fiction, 8 of them were fantasy, 4 sci-fi, 2 thrillers. My pop sugar completions, and I'll talk about that as well. I read 11 and 1 Norse Mythology completion, and I'll also talk about that. So I'm going to start the video with going from the one I liked the least to the one I liked the most. I will be kind of looking at my notes as we go, so if you guys see me looking off to the side, I'm looking at my notes. Okay, so for the first one, the one that actually is going to my DNF pile for forever. I had been wanting to read this book for a long time. I've heard so much about this author, and I was like, okay, let's do this. But it is Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. It's boring, guys. Like, I couldn't get through it. Her writing is great. What got me was not necessarily the constant repetition, because that's totally why I picked up this book. I wanted the Groundhog Day feel, but there was just nothing happening. The events weren't interesting, and they should have been, because the girl dies, but she starts out as a baby, and I got to where she's 4 now, and I'm like, okay, I don't like this. I think it had more to do with the execution of the story as opposed to the writing, because like I said, the writing was great. It was just, I wasn't feeling it. I got about 150 pages in before I actually DNF'd it. And one thing about me with I DNF a book, if I'm not enjoying it, I see no point in reading it. So whether it is an arc or one I spent $30 on, which I spent $5 on this. It was not $30. I will set it aside, but I always give my books to people I think will like them. And then the second DNF on my shelf, or my reads for the month, it's temporary DNF, and it is because detective novels, I have to be in the mood for them. There is nothing I hate more than sitting down and reading a book that you're just not in the mood for. So you go to your Goodreads and give it a 2 or a 3 because you just weren't in the mood for it at that month. I hate that. So it is Kelly Armstrong, which happens to be one of my favorite authors. So I know I like her writing. I just was not in the mood for a detective novel. City of the Lost. This is the first in the Casey Duncan. That's pretty much where we're going with that. I will read this eventually. I just have to be in the mood for a detective novel, and I'm just not. Right? And then the next on my list is actually one I got from Book Tasters. And if you don't know what Book Tasters is, they promote indie authors and they try to get you to review things that aren't being reviewed. My 2-star read is Haunting You by Molly Zenk. It's young adult fantasy, and my issue with this book was not necessarily the writing in general, but it was very dialogue heavy, and I honestly don't mind that. But with this, where the book was set could have been so atmospheric. Could have been that dark academia that you're looking for come fall, and it wasn't. It was just a teenage story about teenagers being teenagers. And then my biggest problem was the romance. And in the course of this, there's a love triangle, but it wasn't necessary. The boyfriend that she has, she won't leave, and there's no reason why, other than she just doesn't want to. Or she does want to, but she doesn't. So it irritated me. I had to give it 2 stars because the love triangle and the fact that it could have been such an atmospheric read, and it wasn't. And I couldn't handle that. Like, moving on. And then the next novel on my list that I listened to, it is part of my Pop Sugar challenge that I do every year. Pop Sugar is a lifestyle blog, and every year they issue a reading challenge. And I really like it because it makes me go outside of my comfort zone, read things that I normally wouldn't read, just thinking outside the box and everything like that. But another author that I absolutely adore, Emma Newman, I read Planetfall. Now, it was really hard for me to rate this novel because I enjoyed 90% of it. And then it just got weird. So, I love sci-fi fantasy. I tend to read more sci-fi fantasy than I do any other genre, even though my favorite genre is horror. But, we'll get to that. Planetfall is about this team of scientists who go exploring looking for God. They think that they've found him, and they end up on this planet. And I don't want to give too much away because there's a lot of intrigue in this novel that I think was very well done. However, the ending, let me just say that this novel touches on mental health and grief, and there are a lot of really real explorations of huge topics, but the ending, it killed me. Like, I couldn't handle it. It was like, what did I just read? Did I just waste hours of my life? There is a continuation of this series, so I'm thinking about picking it up because I really do trust Emma Newman, and I really do trust that she won't completely let me down. But I couldn't handle the ending of this book. It was insane. Okay. My next 3-star read was one I was completely and utterly excited for, and it let me down on almost every level, and I'm so heartbroken, and I'm debating if I will ever pick up this author again. It was bad, guys. It was bad. So, A Secret History of Witches by Louisa Morgan. I bought this full price anticipating that I would absolutely love it. I did not. It was... Let me stop saying that I didn't like it because I rated it 3 stars for a reason. There were elements of this novel that were absolutely wonderful. Writing is great. The characters are well thought out. My main issue was the repetition. There was so much repetition, and I will link my actual review that I did on my book blog. But one thing that irritated me so much about this book is it was so atmospheric and so beautifully written, yet the magic in this is dull, boring, used for the intent and sole purpose of getting pregnant. Why? You're reading A Secret History of Witches. There are elements of witchcraft in this novel, but they aren't even really spoken about. Like, it was just mentioned. And so the witchcraft, the magic here was almost non-existent. And the beginning of this book is so good. But then we get into the repetition of mother who wants to teach her daughter about witchcraft, or doesn't want to teach daughter about witchcraft. Daughter finds out witchcraft exists, rebels against mother because they don't want this life, whatever the situation may be, and then realizes very quickly that, oh, they're a witch. They need to pass this on. There's a bloodline. They need to keep the bloodline going. Time to get pregnant. And then we move on to the next daughter. And I don't like it. I still rated it a 3 because of how beautifully written it was. I still think that there are elements in there that are really great, but I don't want to read any more Louisa Morgan because of the way that that was executed. I'm sad about that because the books are beautiful. I love stories about witches. They are top tier for me. No, we're done with that one. And then the next one I read was for my Norse-vember challenge, and Blog Spells on Twitter, he started a challenge for November for a group of people, and I think there's like 61 of us now. There's a lot to read Norse Viking related books for the month of November. I wanted to read more Norse and Viking books, and spoiler alert, there aren't many out there. There are more than probably what I'm going to find and pick up because of my particular taste, but there's just not a lot out there. So I read Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, and as much as I like Norse myths, that's all this book is. There's not a whole lot going on other than these are the Norse myths that everybody knows, loves, hates, however that goes for you. I was anticipating a little bit more from Gaiman, like maybe he would put his spin on it, or his writing would take those stories over the top, and they didn't. It was good. I'm not going to say that it was bad, but I was anticipating a little bit more from Gaiman. And so I rated the book a 3. I recommend picking it up if you like Norse tales. Definitely worth the read. And the last 3-star, I don't have the physical copy of this book anymore because I've passed it on. Like I said before in the beginning, if I don't like a book, I don't keep it. I either pass it on to my niece. She loves to read. My best friend, also like huge reader. Or I do the buy-sell trade. Like, I really don't want to keep books that I don't like. So I didn't hold on to it. But it was Sadie by Courtney Summers. And the reason I rated this a 3-star as opposed to, a 4 or 5 is because I found the main character to be completely boring. Now, there were aspects of her that I did enjoy. She has a stuttering problem. It makes it hard for her to communicate. She's been abused her whole life. It's really hard for me to look at a book like this and give it a 3-star rating because there were very important topics covered. And the abuse was, I don't want to say it wasn't hard to read, because it's not covered in detail, but I felt it should have been more impactful, and it wasn't. Didn't care, which is really bad to say because, you know, you don't want to read stories about abuse of children and go, oh, I don't care. But the writing didn't offer me the opportunity to connect with the character. I guess that's what I should say. It is written part podcast, part from Sadie's point of view, and the parts that were written from Sadie's point of view were well done. They didn't open up the character for you. Like it wasn't an insight that I thought played well into the story. I actually got more from the interview and interviewing the woman who practically raised her when her mom left. The ending line made me tear up. And it's implied that something happens at the end of the novel. And okay, with everything that happened, it makes sense. But there's also this non-build-up through the whole book. And I think the tension is not built up quite well because everything comes too easily to Sadie. That's basically all I can say about it without giving anything away. Okay. And my first 4-star book. Okay. I have a really big problem with this book, and it has nothing to do with the book itself. It has to do with the medium in which I read it. So I got an ARC copy of The Boneshard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. I have mentioned before, well, earlier in this video, I have mild dyslexia and ADHD. And while this book was great when I got through it, because good Lord, I could not get through it. And I had the hardest time figuring out why. The writing style is fairly simple, and when I say that, I mean like accessible. The novel switches from first person to third person quite often. It confused the heck out of me. I thought I was reading 2 different books. I couldn't figure out what I was reading. And then the multiple perspectives, there's tons of them. I want to say there's like 6 at least. I couldn't keep characters straight. Now, when I'm reading a book like this with the issues that I do have, I tend to want to read them in physical book form. That way I can take notes. I can listen to the audiobook. Something that is going to keep my focus going. Ebook on the app that I use? No, not possible. And I feel horrible because this book is rated so high on Goodreads, and all of my friends have loved this book. I'm not going to say that I didn't love it. I'm going to say I hated reading it. Hated it. The process took so much out of me that I couldn't give it a 5-star regardless of how good it was, because I couldn't sit down and read this book without getting a headache. And that sucks because it's great. But I mean, I recommend it. But if you have ADHD or mild dyslexia, be aware that this book is going to do things to your brain. This book is going to be hard to read, hard to get through, because it switches perspectives so often, and because it's written in first and then third person, and your brain's just going to be like, what just happened? Okay, and then my next 4-star, I love Laini Taylor. I'm just gonna say it. As you can see, right? Chia. I have a Laini Taylor on my TBR, and it is part of my Pop Sugar Challenge, which these books tend to be my Pop Sugar Challenge if you're curious, as they're right here. I see them all the time, and it reminds me, hey, you have to read these soon. Anyway, that's not what you're here for. You are here for my September reads. Laini Taylor. Strange the Dreamer. I loved this book, guys. It's so flowery. There's purple prose all over the place. Laini writes such atmospheric books, and they're wonderful. So the reason I'm laughing, if you have never read Laini Taylor, she's young adult, purple prose, like I said. Her writing is beautiful. But I don't even know what to say. I'm losing my mind. Strange the Dreamer is strange. It just is. I read it for the Pop Sugar Challenge of Great First Lines, and let me go ahead and find the first line and read it to you. On the second Sabbath of 12th month, in the city of Weep, a girl fell from the sky. So this book follows Laszlo Strange, and Laszlo Strange is the most adorable cinnamon roll you will ever meet in your life, and I'm here for it. There was so much tropey badness in this story. Think insta-love, chosen one, things like that. But I didn't care because it was so great. Laszlo Strange was so great. The rest of the characters in the novel were so great. Weep was great. The whole premise of the story was fantastic. I could get past the purple prose and the tropes simply because Laini Taylor writes amazing novels, guys. Like, if you aren't reading young adult because you think there's something wrong with it, it's full of tropes, still pick up Strange the Dreamer, because I can't get past how great the novel was, even though it had so many elements in it that I don't like. And it's a 4-star for me. Like, I really enjoyed it. The next 4-star book on my list is The Trials of Solomon Parker. So I got a NetGalley arc of this novel a while ago. And it stayed there. I forgot to read it. And so I was clearing out my to be read from my NetGalley account, and I picked it up, and I was like, why haven't I read this yet? And I figured out really quickly why. Kind of set it aside and forgot about it. It's a Western. I don't read much Westerns. Lila Bowen, she writes Wake of Vultures. That's one Western that I do enjoy. But this one, I picked it up because of the Native American aspect to it, which, if you guys don't know, I am Native American. There's just not that many Native American stories out there, aside from like PC Cast that I've found. I've heard of The Only Good Indians, a horror novel, which I am kind of excited to read that and pick it up, but it's kind of towards the bottom of my horror want list. I wanted a Native American story. This delivered. It was really good. I really liked the writing. I really liked Solomon Parker. I liked the second chance aspect of it. I liked the characters. I liked the world building. Even though it was our world, you really get a sense of Native mythology. And it was just really well done. It wasn't my favorite type of story, but I still gave it 4 stars because the exploration of grief and what if I could do it over again aspects, really, they just spoke to me. And I would recommend picking it up if you like that type of story, because it was really good. Okay, the next one on my list. Now, I've been wanting to read this book for a while, and I'm one of those people that I don't want to buy my books from Amazon. I really would rather not. And I buy secondhand books a lot. Paula Braxton, The Witch's Daughter. Everything that The Secret History of Witches did wrong, Paula Braxton and The Witch's Daughter did right. So this is about a woman who you meet her when she's older, much, much older. And she's running from something, but it's not clear what. You don't find out what that thing is until she starts to tell her story to a young girl who has decided to kind of adopt this lady. They kind of adopt each other, let's just say that. And then she tells her story. One thing I want to say about Paula Braxton is her writing is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And we follow the life of the witch's daughter. I don't want to give too much away because it's so intricately detailed that to spoil any of it would be a shame. But she's running from something. You don't really know what at first, and it's very atmospheric. Fall reads, yes, please pick this up. It's so good. And you get to live multiple lives with this character, and that in and of itself was fantastic to me. It is not a rebirth story, not like Life After Life. It is just this woman who has lived for so long that she's taken on very different characters in her own life. Okay, next on my list, which I think I might have done a boo-boo, unintentional, but I picked up The Bone Witch by Ren Shipeko, and I picked it up because the Pop Sugar Challenge was to read a book by a non-binary author, and I thought I did because they were on a list of non-binary authors. And then I found out not necessarily are they non-binary, they're gender fluid. So Rin does go by she or them. And I kind of feel bad putting this novel in that slot, but I've already read it and I plan to finish the series, and I didn't really find one by a non-binary author that was super intriguing to me. I'm still looking. I'm not writing it off. But The Bone Witch was actually one that I had been wanting to read for a while because the cover, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. And witches, I love witches. We're going to establish this. If you haven't figured out by the fact that I have 3 books with witch in the title already. So The Bone Witch, it is about a girl named T who she discovers she has necromancy. When the book starts out, though, you're on an island or in a forest. It seems island-ish because you're close to the sea. I don't really remember if it's an island or not. And this bard-like character has come to find T and tell her story. Or T wants to tell her story to this bard-like character. And so this comparison is going to be a little rough, but kind of like The Name of the Wind with by Patrick Rothfuss. Kavoth is telling his story to this storyteller, this chronicler, if you will. But she explains how she came to be and why she is the person she is now. And you find out that she has necromancy. It's not spoiling anything. It's at the very beginning of the novel. When she accidentally raises her brother from the dead during his funeral. So you go on the journey with her while she's trying to figure out how to use her magic. Bone witches are either highly revered or highly reviled. But it's really good. I really enjoyed the writing. It was fantastic. I would highly recommend it. Okay, next on my list is The Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I haven't read the Gresha trilogy yet, but Six of Crows sounded so great, so up my alley that I couldn't not pick them up. And I love this, by the way. The red sprayed edges, it's just really pretty. I liked this novel more than Six of Crows. Now, I am not one of those people who's like, Six of Crows sucks, Crooked Kingdom was great, or, Crooked Kingdom sucks, Six of Crows is great. I like them both. I think I gave them both 4 stars. This one's different from Six of Crows. Six of Crows is a heist. This one is almost like a revenge story. But the way she delves into the characters in this book, I really enjoyed it. Learning about their past, learning about their current problems, learning about all the things that we didn't know in Six of Crows going into this novel. It was just such a great character exploration, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. Again, I really enjoyed Six of Crows. I liked the fast-paced heist novel too. This one's not as fast-paced, but it is still phenomenal. Lee Bardugo, you have my heart, girl. Like, keep writing. I am gonna keep reading. And then my next 4-star for September, I can't find my copy of this book. I know I own it because it is one of my favorite books of all time. I rated a 4-star because of the content. I can't give a 5-star to something that grates on my nerves. I should be able to. I should. Just count this as 4.5 stars because the next book I'm going to talk about is definitely 4.5 stars. So, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Again, Pop Sugar Challenge, and I will do a Pop Sugar video to talk about the challenge and talk about the books I read later. Brave New World. I have loved this story since I read it in high school. If you haven't read Brave New World, I highly recommend it. It was the first sci-fi I read, and it is also the first dystopian book I've read. If you don't know about Brave New World, one of the things that they do in Brave New World is babies aren't born anymore, they're harvested. People are created for certain jobs, and no one gets pregnant anymore. If you do, you're cast out to live in a different place. And this different place does have quite a few people living in it. It's like a tribe of people. They live like most people think natives would live. So far removed from science and technology that they don't even use it. And the book follows a couple of characters throughout. Like, you do get multiple perspectives, and it's not really laid out for you who exactly you're following at the moment. You figure it out pretty fast. Like, it's not labeled, but it shows you the good and bad of society and belief systems, and makes you really question what you believe and why you believe it. And that's kind of a core aspect of my own personality. Like, I want to know why people believe what they believe, and I think I can attribute that to Brave New World. Okay, next on my list, Christopher Paolini's To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. So I got this from NetGalley. I don't have a physical copy. I will be buying one. The best guarantee, I will be buying one. But I got the audiobook. I am a huge Mass Effect fan. The narrator is Jennifer Hale. And for those who don't know who Jennifer Hale is, she is Commander Shepard from Mass Effect. And that is the character you get to play. If you play female, Jennifer Hale is Shepard. And that BioWare games are just top tier for me. I heard the first line delivered in the audiobook, and I didn't know Jennifer Hale was the narrator. Didn't pay attention to that part. And I lost it. Like, I had to pause the book and have my own little freak out because it's Jennifer Hale. So, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars is a sci-fi novel. We are used to Paolini giving us the Eragon-esque, well, Eragon, because that's what he wrote, fantasy. This is sci-fi. Now, I have read mixed reviews about To Sleep in a Sea of Stars because it reads like a Mass Effect game, which I adored. I loved that aspect of it, and then Jennifer Hale was narrating it. Like, it spoke to me on so many levels just because of that. Whoa. So we follow our main character, and oh, I'm so sorry, I cannot remember the main character's name. Okay, so we follow our main character. There is a very, very slow start to this novel, but let me tell you, I believe it was highly intentional. Our main character does live a boring life, a pretty standard run-of-the-mill life. However, she studies alien biology. She's a xenobiologist. And that in and of itself is intriguing. However, her life is pretty slow, pretty normal, pretty average. She has a lot going for her. Life is good, but it's slow and steady. And the beginning of the novel reads that way. Slow and steady. The pacing of it can fall off a little bit because of that. But I believe it's set up that way so that you know when the shift happens, it was not something she was looking for. It was not something she wanted. She was happy with the way her life was going. And then, boom, things suddenly change. She finds this unexplained thing, goes to study it, knows she shouldn't, but does it anyway because she's a xenobiologist. This thing doesn't make sense to her. And I'm saying thing because I don't want to spoil anything. All hell breaks loose. And she has to try and get back to her home planet and warn people about what is happening, why it's happening, what happened to her, all of these things. And she can't get back. And there are reasons why she can't get back. And then this ship shows up, and these are aliens. So it's his first contact as well. And something happens to her where she is able to fight these aliens. That's all I'm gonna say. Let me say that the ending of this novel is completely bittersweet, and I loved it. It was so fantastic. And yes, I do love it because it reads like Mass Effect. And one of the things that I've heard people say that don't like the book is that it reads like a Mass Effect game where you go on a mission and then your mission's over and you go back to the ship and then you have time with your companions. And when your time with your companions is done, you go on another mission. And then the mission's over. And then you go back and then you have time with your companions. That is how you play a Mass Effect game. You're building your relationships with the crew that you have. And I don't mind that setup. I don't mind that the book is written that way. But again, I play Mass Effect. It's my comfort game. So why wouldn't I like this book? Like, it just doesn't make sense that people who like Mass Effect don't like the way this book was written. But that's just me, and I'm not harping on them. That's just my opinion. And then I have 2 5-star books left. The first 5-star book I read was Ender's Game. I loved every aspect of this novel except the kids' ages. I know that people get caught up on the kids' ages, but I'm sorry, in my mind, I aged them up. Instead of 6, they're 16. That I understand why people rate this low, and I understand that it is because the kids are so young. If you didn't know, Ender's Game is a sci-fi where Ender, our main character, is bred. The government basically tells this couple, Ender's parents, to have another kid. They have 2, which is they can't have any more. The government tells them that they can't have any more. but their kids that they produce are geniuses, and they want another one. The first one had anger issues. The second one was more docile than they cared for. But they want these parents to try again and produce a child that they can use for their coming war. And when Ender is 6, which he's not supposed to be recruited until he's 8, but he shows so much promise that they go ahead and take him early. And he joins this military progeny project. And during the course of it, I don't usually like characters who always get the win. But in Ender's case, it made sense. The way he thinks, the way he goes about doing things, his process, because you get to hear a lot of Ender's thoughts. His process for evaluating situations, it made sense that he always got the win. The way the character, if there's a character in a book who always gets the win, but none of it makes sense, that's when it bothers me. Ender, I just love this book. It's fantastic. It is my first time reading it. I've put it off because most sci-fi that people love, they can't compare to Brave New World for me. And this did. I really, really loved it. And I say most sci-fi, most classic sci-fi can't compare to Brave New World for me. I liked it more. I didn't think I would, but I really did. I would recommend picking it up if you can get past the kids' ages, because that is a huge deal for a lot of people going through all of this crap at such a young age. I think it's all relative, and if you can get past the ages of the kids in this particular book, you'll really, really enjoy it. And then my last 5-star book, which I hesitated giving this 5 stars because it is the setup to a series, and the setup to a series does not deserve a 5-star ever. However, I've given 2. Blood Song by Anthony Ryan and Malice by John Gwynne. So this novel, it was a beast to get through because you're reading a setup novel, and sometimes setup novels are just boring. This one wasn't. There was enough family connections, enough emotion, enough. We don't know who the chosen one is. Like, there was enough intrigue to push me in reading this. I finished this in like 3 or 4 days. It was good. It was really, really, really good. And I had to give this 5 stars because setup novels suck. They do. I'm sorry. Setup novels are so boring. And I tend to give setup novels like 3.5 stars. However, this one and Blood Song, 2 of the best novels I've read to date. So I couldn't not give it 5 stars. And I'm so excited to read the next one, which I believe is Valor. And I would totally pick it up if it wasn't for the fact that I was working on my Pop Sugar Challenge and my Norse Member to get through the end of the year. If I could figure out a way to fit Valor into my Pop Sugar Challenge, I would read Valor. But this is high fantasy, and it's the Faithful and the Fallen series, yeah. And we follow quite a few characters. This is a novel that you're gonna have to take notes if you want to keep the characters straight. I know I have ADHD and mild dyslexia, and that's an issue for me anyway. But through the first half of the novel, I was like, who is this? Who am I reading about? Wait, what was that person doing the last time I was with him? However, as with Boneshard Daughter, I have the physical copy of this book. It wasn't an issue. I could take notes. I took out my tabs because I honestly hate the way they look. And I really only want to do that for, reviews. And so I was able to be like, okay, I can find my place. We can get back to this character. We can get back to this part of the story. No problem. And it was so good. Guys, read this book. Read Malice. This is probably going to be one of my favorite series ever. I can already see it just by the way this setup novel was a 5-star. I love fantasy novels. I really, really do. Okay, well, that was my September wrap-up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like, because I'm just here to talk about books and nothing else, and I want to get to know more of you. Thank you. Bye.